Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. We have a special guest today that's going to be talking with us about a couple things. I want to welcome Rick, welcome back from
Hey,
the holiday, and
yeah.
also to you, Sam Paredes. Thank you for coming on.
It's my pleasure, Kevin. It's always good to be with you guys, and I miss seeing you in person. But this is the next best thing, so let's do this.
Definitely. And for those of you who don't know, Sam Paredes runs Gun Owners of California, which is a strong ally of CRPA's. He is constantly up in the Capitol with our lobbyist, Roy Griffith, fighting on behalf of the citizens of California. So, Sam, thank you again. It's a pleasure for
Really
being
good,
here.
and
Should
it's
we
an
call it?
honor and a pleasure to be with you guys. And yes, we are. We're teammates, we're colleagues, and we're fighting for the same goal, and that's a beautiful thing.
And so we want to talk to you today about Assembly Bill 1223. We've talked to you about before. It's a bill that is moving rapidly through the Assembly and Senate, and it deals with taxes. And one of the things Kevin and I were talking before we started the show today is Kevin and I both, and I'm sure Sam, you agree with us, it feels like everywhere we go, we're being taxed. I mean, gas is in some parts of the state well over $5 a gallon. And I'm like, I feel like I have less money in my pocket at the end of every day.
Well, yeah, no, I mean that's just kind of California in general. If you own a small business here, you know that there's tons of regulations, but most importantly for everyday citizens, we have so many taxes. When you go to the grocery store, you can't even use a plastic bag anymore. So this pile of taxes that we tend to have here just keeps getting bigger and bigger. It almost seems like a mountain now.
Yeah, it seems like after coming out of COVID, at least we're coming up for air during the summer. A lot of us are trying to get back on our feet because obviously our ability to make money was diminished. And as gun owners, this Assembly Bill 1223 is attacking us, which could raise taxes, if I believe I'm correct, to almost 31% on like different aspects of the firearms community. Is that correct, Sam?
Yeah, it's first of all, in the state of California, we have a many billion-dollar surplus. And what does that mean? That means that we have been paying way too much in taxes across the board. We have one of the largest surpluses we've had in decades. And of course, the governor and the legislature want to figure out ways to spend it as quickly as possible because, frankly, the law in California says when you raise too many taxes and you have too big a surplus, you're supposed to send it back to the people who put them in. Well, they're working very hard to neglect or avoid or forget that portion of the law in California. So the fact that Assemblyman Mark Levine wants to levy a tax, and the writing is that it's 10% on guns, 11% on ammo and precursor parts, but that's that's a sliding scale, and I fully expect that it's going to be something ridiculous before this is over. And they wanted to put it into the Cal VIP program, which is a program where they grant money to communities who are fighting gun violence. Of course, we immediately had a very strong and visceral reaction because what they're saying is they're equating the law abiding, tax paying gun owners and ammunition users are somehow connected to criminal misuse of firearms because we exercise our lawful Second Amendment rights to enjoy firearms for protection, for recreation, for hunting, as collectors, or for whatever reason we want. Somehow we are responsible for gun violence. And so we are the ones that need to pay additional taxes to combat that scourge. Well, we testified very strongly on this, and I think that the some of the legal beagles, the lawyers at the legislature, might have pointed out to them that, yeah, this is. Oh, the governor in his budget actually set aside millions of dollars to go into the Cal VIP program. So therefore, this tax was going to, they were going to be a wash in cash if this happened. So they amended the bill to put it into the general fund at first, which means that it would be a general tax. It would require 2/3 of the legislature to pass it, and then the signature of the governor. And then they got a crazy idea. Well, you know what? We have one program, for to combat gun violence. Let's start another one. So they created, apparently, the last moment, without notice, they amended this bill on the floor. So it's already gone through the policy committees, through the fiscal committees, and they decided, instead of going to the general tax where we have tens upon tens of billions of dollars of surplus, we're going to create the Gun Violence Prevention, Healing, and Recovery Fund. Because again, we are the ones that are responsible for gun violence and the healing of families that are hurt, and the fact that they need to recover from their tragedies. So they want us to pay for this. Truly, if they have an issue with gun violence, this is something that affects all of society. And if they want to spend some money, it should be everybody who's paying into this fund to address this issue. But Rick, you and I have talked in the past, and with Joel Persinger and Chuck Michelle, that as long as they continue to focus on guns instead of the causes of gun violence, we're going to continue to have gun violence.
Right.
We saw that in San Jose just last week.
Correct.
We have the strongest gun laws in the country here in the state of California. We are rated an A+ by Brady and Giffords and everybody for having all of the possible gun laws you can have. And still, all these gun control laws could not prevent what happened in San Jose. That is a total failure of the gun control system. And to blame us for what one deranged, evil person did in San Jose is absolute travesty. It is incomprehensible to me that they can blame us. But so as long as they keep focusing on gun control instead of, what was it that caused this guy to snap? How can we address those things as a society? We're going to continue to have these things happen. So here, Assemblyman Levine, who is a gun hater at the top of the list, wants to blame lawful gun owners, and he wants to tax us to pay for the consequences of gun violence. So that's where we are. We're going to continue to fight this bill. It's moving through the legislature. They're jamming it through. Even though this was a significant and substantial change to the bill, which means that the bill should go back to the policy committee for consideration, and it should go through the fiscal committees for consideration, they're running out of time. So they're just saying, forget the rules, forget the process, forget the transparency to the public. We're just going to jam this thing down their throats, whether they like it or not. And that's the status of 1223. It should be voted on the assembly floor today in the assembly session. That's what our expectation is. So it still has to go to the other house. It still has to pass by 2/3. They have 2/3 majorities in both houses. That's where we are on this. I'm finding difficulty in finding the words to describe what a travesty and what an injustice this is. And that's where we are.
I want to go back to two things you said, Sam. One of them is, I think a lot of Californians, and it just doesn't apply to gun laws, but since COVID hit, it's been amazing to me of how you just described that this law went through all the committees it was supposed to go through, gets to the end of those committees, completely changes where the money is going, how it's going to go. Everything changes. What would have killed a bill pre-COVID, because you would have been like, nope, can't do that, it would have just been killed. They've used COVID, and it's not just in the gun area, it's across the board. They've become so corrupt, and I'll just say it, that it's like they used a shadow bill to get to what they really wanted. But now we have no voice. And it's literally back to that idea, Kevin, you and I were talking earlier, of taxation without representation, because they've killed that. And what I was going to ask Sam was, I understood from Roy, our lobbyist, that you guys can no longer meet with people in their offices. You guys can't catch them in the hallways because there's this incredibly almost Soviet style be escorted from point A to point B, do not talk, do not do anything security system in a capital that has never had an issue. And that further, that you guys have been trying to call since last week to set up appointments to talk to members, and you're not getting callbacks. You're just getting rerouted into voicemail systems and just left there. Is that all correct, or?
Spot on. The fact is, we are technically allowed into the building if we go and stand in line. We go through the metal detectors, and then a sergeant has to take us to the waiting room to be able to testify for a bill if that's what we decide to do, or to the committee room. They're only using 2 committee rooms, the 2 very large rooms, which means that committees are stacked upon each other, and the schedules are all impacted. And then they're using both floors of the legislature as committee rooms, and we as lobbyists are not allowed on the floor, so we cannot go. So we have had to, instead of going through all of that gobbledygook, we have played by the rules, shame on us, by calling into the phone, going into the AT&T answering system, identifying ourselves, and they give us numbers to be able to testify when our bills come up. And for some reason, magically, when it's time for us to speak 3 times out of all of the committees that we've been to, our calls have been shut off, turned away, not accepted. And in Appropriations Committee in particular, we were exceedingly distressed because we were in line to testify against bills with fiscal impact, and AT&T had a technical difficulty. They informed the chair that they were fixing the technical difficulty, and she was frustrated and harried and in a hurry, so she closed the committee. And they got on the phone once they fixed the technical difficulty, and they said, if you're waiting on the line, the committee hearing is now closed, so have a nice day. Hang up. So we were not able to even say, hey, I'm Sam Paredes, Executive Director of Gun Owners of California. We oppose, AB 1223 or any of the other bills that were being considered. We were cut out of the entire system. And Rick, you are absolutely correct. They're using a pandemic, which should tell everybody, this is one reason they don't want the pandemic to go away. The amount of control that they have right now through the system, they are gaming it to make sure they have a total advantage. Now they don't have to worry about our testimony because they can block us out at any time. They know that we can't meet with our friends in the legislature. If we want to meet, we have to meet outside of the Capitol, which makes it all the more difficult. The members are not allowed to have more than 2 staff people in the office at any time. Most of their staff is working at home, except for some low-ranking Republican members who only have 2 staff members.
Right.
And so you wonder when you make a phone call, and they're getting the same volume of phone calls. There are only 2 people there, and oftentimes one is actually working on legislation or something, and the other one is working on scheduling. And to answer these phone calls on policy issues has become exceedingly difficult on them too. So they are using this system to get rid of the pain in the neck that we cause by going and speaking the truth when we testify. They are able to cut us off at any time and have the control that they want. This is control on steroids that they now have.
Well, I was just curious, Sam. I mean, we fight individual pieces of legislation all the time, and when you get enough grains of sand, it becomes a pile. From a bird's eye view, I mean, are these people genuinely interested in curbing gun violence, or are they just interested in their next paycheck? Because the way that I see it, they are literally creating a tax for gun owners to bankroll their next election cycle. I mean, they create a program to combat gun violence, which creates educational curriculum that's going to give people the idea that guns are bad. Those people are then going to vote for those people again to create more legislation to turn law-abiding citizens into felons, and the cycle just starts all over again. I mean, the politics that are being played here, do they even have a reason to fear the citizenship anymore?
You want to talk about a rigged system, Kevin? You are right. The system could not be rigged more in their favor than it is right now. They are so insincere about curbing gun violence. Their bills, the red flag laws, the enhancements on red flag laws, the taxation, they know that this has zero influence on the commissions of crime. They really don't care that somebody who might be in crisis is identified and reported to the police, and then the police go and confront this person and say, hey, there's a gun violence restraining order against you. We need to take your guns. Go out and have a nice day. Don't do anything bad from here on in. So, like this guy in San Jose, had they taken his guns, they found, explosive equipment in his locker at the transit facility, detonation cord, which in and of itself is a very dangerous item. So nothing would have prevented this guy from going and setting bombs, driving a car into the conference room and killing a bunch of people. He was intent on dying anyways. So they say they identify people that are in crisis, but after they take their guns away, they have there's nothing about the person. They don't evaluate them to see, why are you in crisis? Is it a bad divorce? Is it, you lost a child, or there's an illness in the family that is causing depression? Are you losing your job? What is it? So that they can help these people to make it through these crisis situations. That they don't really care about it. All they care about is taking as many guns away from the public as possible. And you are correct. They want to raise this money, and this money is something that they can go to their districts and say, hey, listen, this is what I did for you guys to curb the situations in San Bernardino and San Jose, all of these acts of violence. We passed this. And of course, since nobody can argue with them, a lot of the public buys it. And so, yeah, the control is on the march here at the Capitol. So yeah, it's a bad situation for us.
Speaking on that, one of the things that, and I've known this for a while, Sam, and we've talked about it before, but I think it'd be good for, the audience to really understand is all of us get frustrated with politicians because why aren't they doing more? And, whether you are a Central Valley Democrat who is pro-2A or a member of the Republican Party, there's this attitude of those members aren't doing enough. And I know when I was working around the Capitol back in the days of Kris Kringle being this, not Kris Kringle, wow, Santa Claus, Pringle, being the speaker, the penalty box for a lot of people, and you brought this up, I mean, if you're playing to whatever the dominant party's politics are, you have a huge office, a huge staff, a huge amount of resources. But if the party bosses that are running the Capitol don't like you, you have a closet for an office, you have 1 to 2 staffers, and you're already outgunned going against your counterpart. So I think a lot of people think, oh, it's just a numbers game to Democrats, and the far left have this many people, and the opposition has this many people, but it's not just a number. My understanding has been of, politicians that might be on our side on this, but it's their staffs are sometimes 1/5 or 1/6 of what the opposition staff is. So they're grossly outnumbered.
Yeah, there's no question about that. And from our perspective at Gun Owners of California and our founder and chairman, Senator H.L. Richardson, we are of the belief that pro-2A members, which thankfully includes the entire Republican membership in the Assembly and the Senate, they're all pro-2A, and we've got a handful of other Democrats that are pro-2A. Their entire job there, because they cannot vote to stop a Mother's Day resolution or propose a Mother's Day resolution in the legislature and have it pass. The other side has so much control. They don't want them to get credit for anything. Their sole job should be to speak up on these important issues for the public, and then spend their time trying to figure out how to get other people elected in marginal districts. Now we're coming up to a redistricting, a reapportionment that's going to be in play next year. Districts are going to be changed. They're going to be different. It could propose some opportunities for us to take advantage of that and to elect more pro 2A legislators. Rick, you and I are working together. We're going to come up with a plan to identify those districts. And then we're going to do everything we can to encourage the sitting members, again, who are really powerless from a policy perspective in the legislature, but have an immense amount of power in the bully pulpit, to identify critical issues like Second Amendment issues, taxation issues, and work with us to help elect like-minded people so that we can tip the ruling party, the junta, over the two-thirds majority so that they can't jam things down our throats with two-thirds votes. But that just takes for our people to be willing to listen and work with us to achieve these goals. Becoming members of Gun Owners of California, supporting members of California Rifle and Pistol Association, donating extra dollars to our political action committee so that we can actually spend them directly with candidates, giving money to our foundation so that we can work in the courts where we are having great victories to overturn a lot of the gun control laws that are on the books. Now, frankly, if we achieve a couple of victories on that side, we're going to be able to come and change the narrative in the legislature. We're going to be able to come and say, hey, listen, guys and gals, what you are proposing has been declared unconstitutional by the United States Supreme Court, and we don't have to testify on the veracity of their bill. We're just going to say, we're going to court. We'll see you there. And when the court overturns this law that you pass and the governor might sign, we're going to do something that they used to do in the legislature in decades past, and that is tombstone acts and pieces of legislation. And that isn't a negative term. They would say, this is the Roberti Roos, Gun Control Act. This is the Fred Jones or the Lily Green Act to do this. So we will, on these dead bills, we will, apply their names to them and say, remember the Levine Act that went down because the court overturned your actions and cost the state of California millions of dollars to go and fight in court. That's what we are going to do. And we will have fun doing that. But you're right. The legislature, it is so stacked behind us. And people say, so then why are you fighting there? And you and me and Roy Griffith and the other folks, Dan Reed and Kathy Lynch, we are all working as a team in the legislature, knowing that we are going to have our rear ends handed to us in a basket because it's the right thing for us to do, to elevate these issues, to point out in legislative hearings that what is being proposed is unconstitutional and wrong-headed. And even though we may lose, it's only a temporary situation. We will win in court in the future if we do everything that we're supposed to do. So, Kevin, you're right. It's a mess down there. They don't want to deal with us. They don't want us to show up to their staff people and say, hey, listen, I'm going to present to you a report that you, the legislature, required to be put together that shows that your piece of legislation is not working. It's wrong-headed. This is your report. This isn't something that we generated. They don't want to be confronted with the truth. They want to do what they do and garner the support of the people like the Brady campaign and Bloomberg and George Soros, excuse me, and the Giffords gang, and that's who they want to cater to because they provide so many resources to help them to stay in power, and that's what we're fighting.
Folks, we thank you for tuning in this week. We'll be back later in the week, more on concealed carry permits throughout the state of California, and we'll have another conversation with Sam. But as always, like us, follow us, and remember, be safe, shoot straight, and fight back for your rights. We'll see you again.